Hey guys, it's Alex from 7th Hour Films, and today I'm going to be reviewing the anime known as The Count of Monte Cristo Gankutsuou. You've probably never heard of this, but well, maybe you have. I guess not really something I can just assume, but Gankutsuou is based off of the novel The Count of Monte Cristo. And it's a bit different from the book, but let's just go ahead and get right into it. So the basic plot of Gankutsuou, which is generally what people shorten it to, is just Gankutsuou. It's basically, if you know the story of the Count of Monte Cristo, take that and alter a few things. First off, we don't get the backstory of, or we don't get the first, probably fifth or the first sixth of the book, dealing with Edmond Dantes. It kind of starts more towards, not really the mill, but it starts out on Luna, or in the book it would be Rome, and it's not exactly told from the Count of Monte Cristo's perspective like in the book and most of the movies. It's actually told from the perspective of Viscount Albert de Morcerf, who actually plays a bigger role in the show than he does in the book, which is fine. So basically, the basic plot is, it's the year 5053, which is different from the book. The book takes place in the early 1800s in France. And for the most part, this does take place in France, just in 5053, which is, you probably think, like, wait, what? That's weird. And it is, but it's good. We'll talk more about that. So basically, so Albert de Morcerf and his friend, Franz d'Epinay, meet this mysterious Count of Monte Cristo on Luna, which is a city on the moon. So instead of going to Rome, they go to Luna. And basically, Albert and the Count become friends. Franz is a bit skeptical of him. And the Count says, like, hey, I'm going to be moving to Paris, and could I rely on you to help set up connections with other aristocrats? And Albert's like, yeah, sure, that'll be great. And so basically the entire plot, if you know the plot of the book, this is pretty close to that, actually, despite being in space and a couple other things. Basically, sorry, clock went off. Basically, the plot is that the Count of Monte Cristo is getting these relationships with these other aristocrats, which include the Morcerfs, the Danglars, and the Villeforts. Those three families, and as well as their friends. And basically, the Count is on a mission of vengeance against the three heads of the families. So that would be General Fernand Morcerf, Baron Danglars. I think in the show his name is Julien, but I don't think he has a first name in the book. Whatever. And the prosecutor, I don't know, he's like general prosecutor or something, some sort of like district prosecutor or something. How would you say? His first name is spelled like Gerard Butler. Like, it's spelled like that, but I don't know how you say that with all fancy, like, because the last name Villefort. So it's, I guess, just Monsieur Villefort. It's like, if you look at that, it's spelled Villefort, but it's pronounced Villefort, and Danglars instead of Danglars, and Morcerf instead of Morcerf, I guess. Morcerf. Anyway, So yeah, it's basically the Count is out for vengeance against these men, and you discover later why he has this vendetta against them. But if you read the book, you already know, and you pretty much basically know the whole show. And so that's something. So that's basically the story. And again, this is pretty much all told from Albert's perspective as opposed to the Count's perspective. So it's interesting, and there are some other things along the way. Like there's something particular about the Count. I don't know if I should give it away here, but it's interesting, and it's something that's not in the book, but kind of replaces something else that's in the book and sort of the backstory of the Count. But yeah, I don't want to give too much away if you A, haven't seen the show, or B, you haven't read the book. And I kind of recommend both of these. They're different, but they're also very similar. It's interesting because despite being in the far future and in space, and there's aliens everywhere, and they have some interesting designs for these aliens. Despite all of that, this is a very accurate adaptation of the Count of Monte Cristo. One problem I have with the movies, and I can't really this really isn't a criticism against the movies because they really can't do anything about this, but the movies heavily reduce the story of the Count of Monte Cristo, and they have to, because the most a movie can really go is 2.5 hours. I know some movies go longer than that, but 2.5 hours is the general decent length. People will start people don't want to go over 2.5 hours. So that's the thing, is when you have to condense the story down that much, you really cut a lot out, and it doesn't really work. And so that's kind of the thing, is because this is a TV show, it's given 24 episodes to tell the story, and not even telling all of the story, but it's telling most of the story. It pretty much keeps almost everything in, and it's really interesting. So, yeah, in terms of the characters, if they're good representations from the book, I would say so. Probably, are there any characters that I didn't really like? There's one character that I didn't like that they kind of changed from the book, and it's he comes in a bit later. He's sort of an aristocrat that is part of the Count's plan. Not to give too much away, but it's this guy that's brought in. He's part of the Count's plan for vengeance. And he's kind of a jerk, like a really big jerk. And he's very, sleazy and evil. Whereas in the book, I don't remember him being that way. Now, I haven't read the book in a few years, but I don't remember him being quite that, clearly evil, I suppose. Trying to sit up so I'm in most of the frame. So yeah, that's kind of the only character that's different from the book. There's not much else. I mean, honestly, all the characters are really solid. The Count especially, it's a very solid portrayal of the Count. It's because this is another thing about the anime, is that because it's not told from the Count's perspective, and you really don't know the Count's backstory. I mean, if you read the book, obviously you do, but if you don't really know the Count's backstory, he's portrayed much more mysterious and kind of creepy, actually. Now, he has his moments of, he'll give, a warm smile, or he'll be very friendly, but then there's other times when he is actually pretty intimidating and pretty terrifying. So, I don't know, it's interesting. It's an interesting portrayal of the Count, and it still works. Because, basically, it does make sense, because if the book was from the perspective of Albert, yeah, this guy is kind of creepy, but he's also still very kind. It's a very good blend. And so, yeah, there's not a whole lot else to mention. The voice acting is pretty decent, again, with the Count. It's a good voice for the Count. Albert's voice can get a little grating at times, especially when he's, like, yelling because he's really pissed off and stuff. It can get a little grating, but it's okay. It works for the show. Yeah, there's not a whole lot else to say. There are changes from the anime to the book, or the book to the anime, whatever. There are changes, but most of those changes come in at the end of the anime, actually. So, like, within the last 3 or 4 episodes is when you get the most changes from the book, but they still work. They're not, like, bad changes. Other than that, the only other thing to say is it's an interesting art style for the anime. It's hard to explain. Like, there will be, like, a character that's drawn, but their shirt, there wouldn't just be, like, they wouldn't just draw a shirt. They would draw the outline of a shirt and put an image behind the shirt. So it's like a clear shirt. They put an image behind the shirt, and then as the character moves, that image stays still. So it's kind of weird, and it's very interesting. They do that with a lot of, like, textures, not just shirts, but sometimes they do it with hair. The Count's hair is like that pretty much, and it's a very interesting style, and only once or twice it became like an eyesore. Like, there's a particular jacket that Albert wears at one point, and gets a little grating on the eyes. But yeah, other than that, it is a really solid anime and a really good representation of the Count of Monte Cristo, which is good because the Count of Monte Cristo is actually my favorite book, and so I love it when it's portrayed well. And because that's the thing is, I've really only seen the 2002 movie with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce. And I thought it was a good movie, but it's not the book. It's kind of like Percy Jackson, and I like the Percy Jackson movies. I know a lot of people hate it, and it's like, they're not the book, but they're okay movies. The only thing I could, and about, like, the movie adaptations is that there's going to be a new movie adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo, and it's being directed by David S. Goyer. Now, you might not know who that is. This is the man that hates comic book fans, but writes comic book movies. This guy, he is a total jerk to comic book fans. And he's been writing, he's mostly been doing the DC movies. Marvel kind of got rid of him. And basically, he wrote, like, Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, The Dark Knight Rises. He did stuff in the Dark Knight trilogy, but I'm gonna assume that he did this parts I don't like, because he's not that good of a writer. Now, he's directing the movie. I still don't have faith in him as a director, and the writer for the new Monte Cristo movie wrote the first Sherlock Holmes movie with Robert Downey Jr., which I liked that movie, but a lot of people that have read Sherlock Holmes have said it's an atrocious Sherlock Holmes movie, and that's the phone ringing. I'm not answering it. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna talk over. We're not even gonna cut. Screw it. We'll do it live. So yeah, he wrote. And I thought that was a fun movie. I didn't think it was great or anything, but freaking phone, shut up. But it was not a Sherlock Holmes movie, and people that read Sherlock Holmes knew, like, they said, like, it's a terrible Sherlock Holmes movie, but it's an okay movie. So I'm very worried about the next interpretation of the Count of Monte Cristo with these two people pretty much heading it, I guess, is kind of what I need to say. So yeah, that's kind of just a little aside, but if you want to see a good representation of the Count of Monte Cristo, then go check out Gankutsuou. It's really great. You can find it on Funimation. I might link down to it in the description. It's completely like free of charge. You just have to like set up an account. And if you have ad block, you're going to have to disable that for Funimation at least. But it's not that bad. There are no like crazy ads or anything. But yeah, it's completely free of charge. You can go check it out on Funimation. And that's pretty much it for this review. So end cards have popped up. So yeah, that's basically it. Go check out Gankutsuou. And go check out the Count of Monte Cristo book, because it's really good, and it's my favorite book. I love it. I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.